So once my dad took Estelle and Wyora with him down to the railroad track, oh, to the horse racing track. And he gave them money and told them the way to play the game is to take your money and bet. And he told them about the odds. And if the higher the odds, the more return you're going to get, but the less likely that your horse is going to win. So both of them went down and they had their money and they bet it away, and neither of them came home with any money. And Doral said that was the best money that was ever spent, because he heard those women use that money to buy other things so many times, wishing that they still had the money and not the joy of being at the track, because then they would have bought this pair of shoes and that hat and this coat. He said they spent that money many times over. So he used to laugh at them always, oh, if they only had that money instead of spending it at the track.
Now they got to enjoy all the ideas of all the ways they could have spent it after it was gone.
Yeah, after it was gone. And they didn't have that much fun because they didn't win.
Didn't want to go back to the track.
No, didn't. The end. I'm going to try to tell the story of Shuswap Sal, because Doral asked me how that horse did that belonged to Doral. So at the track, if a horse ran and won a number of races, then on the third time it did this, it could go up for sale and somebody else could buy the horse. So I can't remember exactly what happened, but somehow the jockey was given instructions to either hold the horse back when it should have won. And so it fell into the category of horses that could be bought. And then somebody bought the horse. And so Doral always felt like he had been robbed by the jockey, but somebody had probably just paid the jockey to hold the horse back instead of letting it win. So it was a winner and it did well, but it kind of got bought out from underneath Doral by Doral.
Oh, so someone knew that it was a pretty good horse.
Yeah.
But interesting. So he was the owner.
Yeah, Doral was the owner.
But someone else could buy it out from underneath him?
Yeah.
It's probably more like a leaser, that you probably would have like rights of.
Well,
yeah, it'd be fun to look into this
to look that
figure
up.
out what.
Because in a way, Doral was a gentleman. He, like in boxing, he believed you don't hit beneath the belt. You play the sport the way the sport's meant to be played. So he was a big believer in games of all sorts, but not in cheating in the game, but in winning in a gentlemanly or in just a fair way. But things had turned around. Once Kelvin and I and Doral were in the Travelall, and I was expecting Rebecca, and we were downtown, and Doral was driving. He was driving down First Street right by the bay, and he looked down the corridor. He looked down the alley, and somebody was being beat up. So Doral wheeled the Travelall down that alley, and 2 or 3 guys were kicking the shit out of somebody who was on the ground. And Doral jumped out of the car and said, "Hey, you get away from him," you know. And then the other guy said, "Oh yeah, you want to fight? I'll fight you." So Doral said, "Well, you'll have to take the first punch," because Doral was a boxer, and a boxer's hands are considered a lethal weapon, but not if somebody else first takes the first swing at you. So this guy took a swing at Doral, and then Doral took a swing back. But then another friend of the other guy leaped out and jumped on Doral's back. And then Kelvin was sitting in the car with me. And so he jumped out and started running over there. And then Kelvin had the
He was a big guy.
He was a big guy, but he couldn't have
fought
boxed
to
his way
save
out.
his life.
No, he couldn't have fought. But he
Would have
But he
been
was
like
big enough to scare the guy.
girly slaps.
yeah, but he jumped out, and then the three guys who were beating up on the other guy, the three of them disappeared because it looked like
It might get to be an even fight.
yeah. And then the guy who was being beat up just kind of got up and slithered his way through a back door in that alley. And then Doral said afterwards to Kelvin, the guy who jumped on my back could have had a knife and killed me. I have to be careful because fights aren't done fairly anymore. Yeah. So I do have another story to tell about Doral and fighting. The church used to run a baseball league. And I don't know who they played, if it was intercity or anyway. They had all booked, they booked one of the baseball fields, and they were going out to practice. And when they got there, there were some young kids there playing. And Doral said, "You'll have to leave now, it's our turn." And they said, "No, we're not leaving." And Doral said, "Well, we have a permit to use the field now." And the kids said, "Well, you can't make us." And somehow the kid came to Doral and said, "I'll fight you." And Doral said, "Well, you don't want to do that." And the kid said, "Yes, I do." And so the kid swung at Doral. So Doral just popped him in the nose back. And the kid's front teeth fell out. And then the person went home and told his parents, "I want you to sue the man who just punched me." And the parents said, "You deserve the punch. It's probably the best lesson you'll ever learn." And Doral heard that years and years later. The kid came back and found him and told him, "You knocked my front teeth out, but it was the best lesson I ever learned." Stories that aren't captured anywhere. The end.
Question mark?
Question mark? Is it
Yeah.
really the end?
There is
It's
no
not
end.
the end until,
Till someone sings.
Until the fat man sings.
yeah.
What will he sing?
I don't know.
Start that skipping story again.
I used to watch my dad skip out on the front lawn. He'd have a rope and he would do like double, like pepper, but he would do one skip and then a double, make that rope go twice under his feet before he came down, and then one and then double. And then sometimes he would do pepper, but he would be going, his arms would be going back and forth, so crisscross as he would do it. So I could never do any of those things. But with that same rope, once I wanted to know how to lasso a calf. So he showed me how to lasso a calf and how to make the loop and how to make the rope come down, and then how to roll it over my head, and then how to switch it out. So, and see if I could get somebody who was just standing. So I'd do a lot of practicing on calf roping like that. So when I was married and had a little batch of kids, I asked Doral to buy me a skipping rope because now I wanted to do skipping with my kids. So he went up to a hardware store that sold rope to cowboys, I guess. It could have been called Chesney's Hardware, I think. One of the last old hardware stores. Anyway, he went up and bought me a big rope that I could do double Dutch with my kids, and brought it home and then tied the ends. Oh, because I was just going to get any commercial skipping rope. He said, no, you had to have the right weight. So he'd get it for me. So I still have that rope in the bag and I still skip with my kids. That's the skipping rope that sometimes we still use.
Do you remember the skipping rope, Doral? I remember the skipping rope.
Yeah.
It's a heavy weight.
I don't think I was ever invited to the skipping rope
Did you skip?
parties.
Did you skip those
No, I
parties?
didn't. I skipped those parties.
Anyway,
I was not coordinated enough to skip.
The tripping parties, not the skipping parties.
the end.